The Shepnaz podcast begins now.
You're listening to the Shepnaz podcast, a podcast by Shepherd Church. Everything we do here is to connect our community in a meaningful relationship with Christ. We're expecting great things. My name's Joey. I'll be your host today. And today we're shining a spotlight on missions as we are joined by Joyce Tempel, missionary for the Church of the Nazarene. And Rob Paul will also be with us. It's set to be a great episode, and it all happens now. Hey, Pastor Rob, thanks for being here. How are you doing today, man?
I'm doing great. Thanks for letting me join you today.
Yes, I'm allowing you to join.
I do appreciate it very much.
Well, hey, we're not going to drag out the introductions because we have a very special guest today. She's joining us via Zoom. Her name is Joyce Tempel. She is the Global Missions Engagement Coordinator, which means she connects with those who sense God calling them to missions and supports them as they discern how to answer that call. She's married to Howard. They have two kids, Davi and Lila. And in Brazil, Joyce served in urban church planning and pioneering church ministry in the Amazon rainforest. In addition to all the things that she does at Global Missions, she's also the co-pastor, along with her husband, of the Brazilian ministry at Central Church of the Nazarene in Lenexa, Kansas. So Joyce, welcome into the Shepnaz podcast. How are you doing today?
Well, I'm doing good. Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be with you guys and talk.
Yeah, thank you for joining us. And by the way, there's a lot more to the things that Joyce has done. So we're excited that you're with us today.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Well, Joyce, you at the time of this podcast, you've not been here, but at the time people are going to listen to it, they will have seen you because you're our speaker for our Faith Promise Sunday. We'd love maybe for you to give us some insight, a little bit about your story, maybe how you came to faith in Christ, how he called you to missions, like what kind of makes Joyce Joyce?
Yeah. Well, I was born in Brazil and I grew up knowing Jesus, but not knowing Jesus, not having a relationship with Jesus. When I was a teenager, my older sister, she had several issues going on in her life. And then somebody preached the gospel for her. She accepted Jesus, and then she started inviting me to go to church. And I always said no. At the time, I was 16. And then one nice evening in Brazil, warm evening in Brazil, I was with friends in front of a school, and we were just hanging out and talking. And I felt in my heart that I should go to church. I knew that at the time, my sister, my two sisters, and my mom were at the church. They had a prayer meeting. So I felt that I should go to church that evening, and I decided to go. And in Brazil, most of churches are very simple. It's just one big room, not so big, with a door right in front of the sidewalk, so people could see inside. And I remember I was across the street, and I sat down on the sidewalk, and I was thinking, I don't know if I should get inside of this church or not. And in my heart, there was something like pulling me in, and another side of me pulling me out, saying, no, don't go. And then I finally said, okay, I think I need to go to this church and see what's happening there. So I crossed the street, and at the moment that I put my first step, that I put my first foot on that church, and I started walking, it was a very simple church, wooden pews, and people were praying on their knees. Nobody greeted me. Nobody talked to me. But I felt something that maybe, I don't know if it was physical, but in my brain and in my heart, it felt physical, that something warm was being poured down from, top to bottom. And then my head was warmed up, my shoulders, and then my arms, and then my whole body was warmed up. And I felt that I wanted to cry, and I did not understand what that was. And I thought, well, maybe I'm feeling the presence of God.
Wow.
And
Awesome.
then I kneeled and I started talking to God, and I felt that the conviction of sin. I spoke to him. I did not know much what to say, but I said, Lord, I'm far from you. I don't know you, but I know that I'm a sinner, and I need what I'm feeling. I need this God. And if you are calling me to belong to you, I'm giving my life to you. And I did. That evening, I gave my life to Jesus, and he changed everything in me. And it was the next day, I started making wise decisions because I knew that was the way. 2 months later, I asked the pastor to baptize me, and then I started really getting involved in the local church. And 1 year later, when I was 17, I was reading Jeremiah, and I was reading the calling of Jeremiah. And then I felt those words coming out of the pages of the Bible and speaking to me and saying, that God was calling me to be a prophet to the nations, to be a missionary. And I felt that the same way that Jeremiah answered, like, I'm just a child. I don't know how to speak. And then God said, don't worry about that, because I will put my words in. I will send you. And I felt that God was speaking to me through that. And then I decided to prepare myself for missions. And that's what I did. Yeah.
That's awesome. Awesome. I love that your testimony includes just coming into church while people were praying and experiencing the presence of God and giving your life to him. And that's, as a church, we've really been working hard to focus more on prayer and believe that God moves through that. It doesn't have to be a big program or an outreach event. It's just the power of God working and moving in people's lives. So that's so cool.
And it gives me goosebumps because I remember today when I started walking and nobody needed to say anything. They were just praying and I felt God's presence, and that changed me and changed my future. So it was beautiful.
I love it. That's awesome. Very cool.
Yeah.
Well, Rob's going to talk about Faith Promise.
Yeah. So before we do that, tell us a little bit about what you do, because you work for the General Church in addition to being a pastor at a local church. So tell us what you do there and so how you spend your time doing that.
Yeah, sure. So I've been in the U.S. for 16 years now. So in Brazil, I prepare myself to serve in missions. And one of the greatest examples for me was Dr. Nina Gunter. When I was studying to be ready to serve, it was very difficult, belonging to a culture that at the time was not ready for female leaders. I was a little bit difficult and I was very discouraged. And then one day, Dr. Nina Gunter came to seminary in Brazil, and they had a chapel, and I was there to watch her. And I remember that I was really trying. There was a struggle in my heart because I did not know if I should pursue, what I felt that God had for me was, to be in ministry, to serve. And then when I saw her and they said, oh, she is the general superintendent of our global church. I spoke to myself and to God, and I said, God, if in this church, she has a place there to be the global leader of our church, and if you can put her there, you can just, fulfill my calling of wanting to be a missionary. So that's the time that I really make a decision to continue serving with the Church of the Nazarene. And I finished my studies in Brazil. And while I was there, I was serving the Amazon rainforest every summer. And then I was sent to Africa, to our university, ANU, African Nazarene University.
Okay.
And there, God used an American pastor to bring me here to the U.S. He said that God spoke to him that he should bring me to the U.S. And we did not know why or how at the time, but we were obedient. And that's really not what I expected for my life, because I always had this vision that my service would be kind of like pioneering ministry in very difficult places. So sometimes we have this vision of what God has for us, and he really surprises us with amazing things. But I was faithful. I did not plan. I was not thinking that was his path for me, but I wanted to be obedient. And he opened up the doors, and I came and I served for almost 10 years at a local church, working with missions mobilization and several other things. And then I went to grad school here. And then I started also serving the general headquarters with the general board and all the general meetings with translation. So I was working with translating books, translating all documents, and being present at meetings for, translating from English to Portuguese. And then when I finished grad school, God really was touching me and saying that he had something different for my life, a new chapter. I did not know what it was. And then I heard that global missions here in Kansas City had an opening for temp, and it was in the area that I just finished my grad school for. So I applied, and then I came to be a temp, and then they extended the invitation, and I've been here in Kansas City for 6 years now, and I love what I do. It's amazing to see that now I'm not really on the field for one side, because I work more in the creative part of things and also developing candidates, but I also feel that the U.S. is my mission field, and I'm here to serve the country, not only the American church, but also the immigrants that are coming. And that's why I pastor a Brazilian ministry here as well.
I was going to say, you don't seem busy enough, so it's good that you're also pastoring a church.
Yeah.
That's good.
I love that you feel like you're a missionary here in the United States, because I think the mindset in the church here is that we send missionaries other places, but our culture is has strayed a lot, and we have other countries sending missionaries to our country. And that's kind of convicting to me a little bit, but I love the fact that we're part of a global church, and that God is using people from all around the world to even impact and influence us here as well. So thank you for answering that call.
You're welcome. You're welcome. And I think it's important to discern what God is doing here in the U.S., because when we think about the growth in the American church, for the Nazarene Church, most of the churches that are growing here are multicultural churches, are churches that have multicultural congregations. And so that it is what God is doing, and we want to be a part of that. So the first 10 years that I was here, I was focusing a lot on learning from the culture, on serving the culture. And now I'm able to not only do that, but also help others that are coming to the U.S. to feel that they are part of a community, a very diverse community, and helping our churches as well to understand how amazing it is to have multi-congregational church in their church present there, people who are from other cultures but are part of their church. So
Yeah. Awesome. Cool.
If you haven't taken the step of baptism in your life yet, we want to invite you that on February 5th, you could take that step. Baptism is a moment in which you're able to say that Jesus has changed my heart on the inside, and I want to proclaim it to the world. If you'd like to sign up for baptism, you can do so by filling out the Connect card, letting us know that, or you can go to our website, and on the right-hand side under Contact Us, you can click the link that says, I want to be baptized. Pastor will reach out to you, and we will get that scheduled. If you didn't get a chance to be a part of Faith Promise this year, don't fret. We've got you covered. You can still contribute. Faith Promise is our way of raising funds to support the spread of the gospel around the world. We consider Faith Promise a form of worship by stepping out in faith and relying on God to provide the funds that we might not yet see. We do this by asking you to prayerfully consider making a pledge to faithfully give on a weekly or monthly basis on top of your regular giving over the next year. Your pledge is confidential between you and God. If you want to learn more and support, please go to shepnaz.org/faithpromise.
Well, you by the time people hear this, you will have spoken at our church for Faith Promise, and there are a lot of people who've been a part of the church who know what that is, but if they're fairly new, Faith Promise might be a new thing for them. Can you tell us a little bit about Faith Promise and what that is?
Sure. So we always love to let our Nazarene people, brothers and sisters, know that we are a global church, and we are a church who invests in going where the church is not yet as well. So today we are present in 164 world areas, and every year we are growing. We have more than 2.6 million members all over the world. And what we want to do is that we want to continue growing. We have several stories of what missions is doing, what global missions is doing all over the world in changing people's lives, in changing communities, in bringing education, in bringing just social improvements in places. So when we talk about Faith Promise, we are asking people to join in what God is already doing all over the world through the Church of the Nazarene and being part of that. So maybe you cannot go as a missionary. Maybe you have your limitations, but you can be a part of that by giving to World Evangelism fund, and that's why we have Faith Promise. We want people to be a part of amazing things that the Church of the Nazarene is doing, and they can do that by donating and having that faithful pledge of, okay, I want to be part of this amazing things that are happening. And always when we send our missionaries or people from our office to go to churches to do Faith Promise, we always ask them to share stories, to share what God is doing, so people will feel part of that. It's not only like, oh, I'll give you this check, I'll be a part of this, but I am part of this. So that's something very important for us.
Yeah. So Faith Promise is when people support world missions financially, because maybe we can't go, but we can help support those who are there. Can you give an example, or like the question is, like if someone on Sunday pledges $100 or $1,000 or whatever it might be, what kind of things would their money, what kind of fruit would that money bring on the mission field? Like, what does it actually go to? How does it really make a difference?
Sure. Let me give you an example. We have a missionary that he serves. He was a refugee when he was a child in East Africa, and he grew up. He had to flee from his country and go to a neighbor country, and there he met his uncle, and he did not have like shoes, or his clothes were really old and dirty, and his uncle said, go to that church and they will give you clothes. And he went there, and it was a Church of the Nazarene, and he accepted Jesus Christ. So the church helped him with his initial needs, and then he found out the greatest need that anybody will have, that is Jesus Christ, and he gave his life to Jesus. He grew up, he went to Europe, prepared himself, became a missionary, and today he is the support that he receives comes from World Evangelism Fund, and he went back to those countries to serve as a missionary. Today he oversees 3 countries in East Africa, and he helps several churches. We have churches in refugee camps in Uganda, in Kenya, and many other places. And this week I just found out from him that we have Pastor Martha, that he oversees her work in Uganda. She baptized only this month, January, 55 people.
Wow.
And
That's wonderful.
just this month.
That's
and
awesome.
So it's amazing. When you invest in Nazarene missions, you are investing for eternity. It's an eternal investment. There's no better investment than that. Seeing people's lives being transformed, and also helping with the needs. We do a lot of social help as well in many countries. We have a lot of many child development centers all over the world that helps kids and many other things that are going on. Yeah.
That's cool. It reminds me of the verse where Jesus said to store up for yourselves treasures in heaven. And when you're giving to Nazarene World Missions, you're really making a difference that lasts for eternity in people's lives.
Yes.
Yeah. And then it gets multiplied by that person
I always
going
like,
out.
yes, and I always like to say it's a rippling effect.
Yeah.
You have no idea. It's like throwing a little pebble on a lake. You think it's very little, that amount that you're going to give, you think it's little, but it's not. For God's kingdom, it's not.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's good. God's good. He takes the little things and he does incredible things out of it, extraordinary things. So very cool. Great. Hey, I don't know if you ever made the connection. I know that the church that you're in Lenexa is Central Church, where Pastor Sam Barber was the pastor. Yes. And Pastor Sam Barber was the pastor of this church in Shepherd before he came there. So you'll get when you come, or by the time people hear this, you'll have already been here. Yep. So to see where Sam was before. So
I love Pastor there. Sam. That's awesome. Yep. I did not know that. Thank you for sharing.
Yeah, he's great. And he's also our district superintendent now. So when he left there, he came here to be the district superintendent. So we'll tell him you said hi.
Oh, please.
Great.
Yes, please do so.
Awesome.
It's a big world, but it's not that big. We find that out all the time.
The Nazarene world is not that big.
No, it's not.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, hey, Joyce, what's coming up in your life, a project maybe that you're working on, or maybe even in your family? Like, what are you looking forward to happening soon?
Oh, yes. So let's talk about my local church. So we are celebrating 5 years, our fifth anniversary for the Brazilian ministry.
Oh, wonderful.
When we moved here, we transferred our credentials to, at the time, Pastor Sam's church. And then we presented to him the idea because I did a research around my community here. And I found out that there were several Brazilians living around. So we presented to Pastor Sam, the pastor at the time, the idea of starting to work with Brazilians. And then he loved the idea. So for 1 year, we started meeting Brazilians at Walmart, at, restaurants, on many places, many public places, and inviting them to come to our house, have a meal, or, we started Bible studies at homes, and then we grew and we were having like more than 40 people at our house for kind of like weekly meetings. And then we asked Pastor Sam, okay, Pastor Sam, it's been almost a year. We have this group, we want to start a service. And then he was all for it. And then we started that service, and it was the last Sunday of January in 2018. And then the last Sunday of January, we are going to celebrate our fifth anniversary. And right now we have an attendance of 80, 90 people. Sometimes we have 100 people coming to our services, all Brazilians. And it's I'm excited for the anniversary of our ministry. And Dr. Filimao Chambo, he is not Brazilian, but he speaks Portuguese. So he will be the speaker for that evening. And I'm really excited for that Sunday. And people can find more about us on Facebook. We have a Facebook page. It's called Nazareno Lenexa. It's instead of Nazarene, has an O at the end instead of E.
You teach us Portuguese, yeah.
So you can find us there or in Instagram as well. And I'm really excited for that.
That's cool. And for those who may not know, Dr. Chambo is one of our general superintendents as well.
Yes.
And one of the three that is not an American. So even our general superintendents are representing the global church. And I'm guessing that your services are in Portuguese?
Yes, they are in Portuguese every Sunday. Every Sunday evening, we meet from 7 p.m. to around 8:30, and it's all in Portuguese.
Awesome. Great. Very good.
Well, Joyce, we want to thank you for taking some time out and also for being a part of our Faith Promise Sunday, and we're thankful for your ministry.
Yep.
Oh, thank you so much for inviting me, and I hope that people will be inspired and wanting to know more about the Church of the Nazarene, wanting to know more about Nazarene missions and what we do to further God's kingdom. And thank you so much for this opportunity.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for taking the time. We appreciate it very much.
Have a great day, Joyce.
Thanks. Bye.
That's going to take care of today's episode of the Shepnaz podcast. A special thanks to Rob Paul for hanging out with us and letting us use his office until the podcast finds a more permanent home. And to Joyce Tempel for having time to be with us today. Be sure to subscribe wherever you find your audio. Please leave us a nice 5-star review. And don't forget that we've got an email that you can send your thoughts to, your questions that you have, or maybe some funny memes that'll make us laugh. That email address is podcast@shepnaz.org. You can learn more about what God is doing at Shepherd through our app, various social media pages, and of course online at shepnaz.org. For Joyce and Rob, I'm Joey. Have a great rest of your day.
This podcast is a production of the Shepherd Church of the Nazarene, Gahanna, Ohio. Email to podcast@shepnaz.org and let us know what you think.